morning, Peter here. In our video devotionals this month, we've been thinking together about how it is we find God in nature. And that, of course, raises the interesting question of, well, how much can nature teach us about God? Now, according to the Apostle Paul, the answer to that question is quite a lot. In fact, in the first chapter of Romans, Paul very plainly makes the case that what nature reveals to us about God can result in no one of us ever being able to plead ignorance when it comes to whether or not God exists, answering that question, that simply what nature bears witness to is more than sufficient to make the case that there is a God and how that God is basically disposed towards us. In the 20th verse of that first chapter, Paul writes the following: "Ever since the creation of the world, his eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things he has made." Paul was absolutely convinced that the creation tells us about the Creator. One of the teachers in the early church is quoted as saying, "Nature is the teacher, and the soul is the pupil." That was Tertullian. And Paul wants us to understand that nature declares to us something of the power of God. And I think we can appreciate that. When we stand in the presence of nature, we can bear witness not only to the power we see in nature, but also the power that is behind it, the power that is responsible for it. That is something that nature bears witness to by way of teaching us about God. And then the other thing that Paul references is that the creation reveals the nature of God, which means it tells us something about who God is. I wonder what you think nature has revealed to you about who God is. Maybe you can think for a moment of some things that you would identify or that you would point to. I know in my own case, I think straight away of the order of creation, that there is an order to the creation. It operates in a very specific and planned and intentional kind of way, at least to my eye. And that, of course, as it does for the Apostle Paul, also bears witness to the presence of sin. So since the nature bears witness to an orderliness in the creation, we think of sin as the state of affairs when the creation isn't operating as it should. It's out of whack, so to speak. Nature also speaks to me about care, that there is provision, there is an abundance in this creation that God has made. But it's not just for we humans. God's care extends to the whole of creation and everything that is in it. And I think that's a lesson about God's nature that I take away from nature as I observe and interact with it. I think also of the change that I witness in nature. It's constantly in movement, constantly in flux. And there is a freedom to the creation. And it's something that we enjoy as well. And that speaks to the nature of God as endowing not only us, but the whole creation with a certain level of freedom to develop as it should, as we should. And then the last thing that I notice about God's nature, or I think I discern through observing the creation, is beauty. It is astoundingly beautiful. And that, of course, is not something that the creation intrinsically needed to possess. Beauty is something that transcends anything that was absolutely necessary, doesn't it? And yet, the nature that we witness each and every day bears witness to God's standard of what is beautiful and what is commendable and what is awesome. And I think that tells us something about who God is. So maybe an opportunity for you to think today, again, what is it that nature teaches you about who God is? And how can that be something that you give thanks for today? I hope you have a wonderful one.